And we're back, this time with the Hellion review for the Darkest Dungeons. We're going to talk about things like her stats, her skills, her camp skills, her resistances, her trinkets, and her best team comps and partners. Uh, let's just give it a start. Let's go to the stats. So here are the Hellion stats. Here we have this Hellion stats actually extracted from this line. We pulled her out to the bottom to compare with the averages of the rest of the cast. You can see really quickly there is no red at all on her kit in terms of stats, and that's really, really good. But let's go through these stats individually, and we'll do a summary at the end. So we've got above average HP, one of the higher ones in the game at 246. She's tied for 5th place with the Abomination. That's very good. She also has higher dodge than the Abomination, so she is technically 5th overall in terms of overall main stat durability. She's got 30. That's above average. One of the tied for 2nd place in the game after the Jester. She's tied with 4. She's tied with 5 other characters, which is amazing. She's got very, very good defensive stats right away. She's got just slightly below average speed, a little sad for a damage dealer, but there are other stats that are for offense, and that is the crit, which is one of the highest in the game as well, tying with the Highwayman for what is this 5th place. That's amazing. We've got a very good damage range, actually one of the higher ones in the game as well, tying for 3rd place with the Crusader. Very, very good, 10 to 19, very above the average of 8 to 16 and a half. And then we've got her resistances, which if you look closely, they're all average in my opinion, except for bleed resist, but they're on the higher ends of the averages. So she has above average stun resist, above average blight resist, disease resist is about average, above average move resist. She has one of the higher bleed resists in the game, tied for 2nd place with like a bunch of other people. And if it was not for the Flagellant being designed specifically to have amazingly high bleed resist, she would be the highest bleed resist character in the game, next to all of these people as well. Her debuff resist is the only one that's below average, but that's fine. It's not a big deal. And her trap disarm is average. Her move though is 1 forward and 1 backward. And that is actually one of the Hellion's biggest weaknesses, not being able to move backwards. She is a character that is most optimal when played in position 1. She's the most optimal when playing in position 1. And so during stalling phases, when you need to just pass the turn with the Hellion, she can't actually move backward in order to pass her turn. So that's a big issue in that she would actually have to pass her turn and take a stress penalty for doing that if you want to delay her turns. Her most optimal set doesn't really allow her to use a move to pass her turns. So this is actually one of I think the Hellion's biggest weaknesses, and it's very overlooked because moving is not very used often. But overall, in conclusion, her stat spread is probably, in my opinion, the best one in the game. We've got crazy high main defensive stats, and her dot resists are really amazing at 100 and 100 each a piece for blight and bleed resist respectively. And that's amazing. So overall, she's actually a super durable character. One of the more durable characters in the game. Hellion, as a frontliner, as a position 1 character, having these amazing defensive stats, very, very good. Really, really appreciate that. And also, she has amazing. Look at these super green offensive stats. She just can. She's so good at being alive, and not only being alive, but also making things on the opponent's team not alive. And that's very, very good for this game. The one weakness, though, is her speed. Oh, yes. I almost forgot to talk about the crit buff. The crit buff here is, so she's going to crit pretty often, so at 9%, and her moves have a decent crit modifier on them. So this crit buff is going to be activated pretty often. It's plus 33 damage versus bleeding enemies, so enemies who are bleeding will take 33% more damage from the Hellion. How good is that crit buff? I think this crit buff is very, very weak, actually. Another one of the Hellion's weaknesses is that she has a poor crit buff. There's very, very few applications for this, mainly because you will be opening with a move that kills position 4 called Iron Swan, and by doing that, if you crit doing that, you will be probably transitioning into if it bleeds, and if it bleeds is doesn't have a very high damage mod on its own, so the plus damage bonus with the crit for critting Iron Swan doesn't really apply too well. It doesn't work too well with if it bleeds, and The only real place where I could find a niche for this crit buff is against position 2 characters. I mean, not position 2, size 2 enemies, like the Brigand Bloodletter and the Ghoul, where you will, if it bleeds them, in order to get that bleed onto them, because you'll probably be staying in that fight for a while, so you'll probably get the full duration of that bleed as well, which means you'll get full damage out of a dot, which is amazing. And if you were to crit if it bleeds, you would not only apply a bleed, but you will also get a bleed bonus on the next round, where if you were to Wicked Hack, you would deal a lot of damage to those size 2 enemies. You can also run her in slightly more bleed-oriented comps, but I don't really recommend that as much, just because it's like it's not worth like specifically running characters for those cases where she does happen to crit, then you get an extra bonus. It's something to keep in mind, but not my first priority. But overall, again, very amazing stats. We can work with these stats. Let's move on to the skills. So we've got the Hellion skills here. A lot of them are very good. This is the set I recommend to you the most. This is her, I believe, optimal set. But she does these other 3 moves are usable in certain scenarios, and I'll explain to you why and when they will be usable. Some of these are actually very flexible in that you can easily take one of these out and choose one of these 3 and probably be pretty happy with it. But let's go through each of them individually. Her first move is Wicked Hack. It's a move that is launchable from positions 1 and 2 and targets the enemy's positions 1 and 2. It's got a accuracy of 105 and a crit mod of 8. The crit mod of 8 is pretty good. It's not the best. It does bring her only up to 17%, which means she crits 1 out of 6 times. It's alright. It's usable. But really, this move doesn't really see much usage compared to the other 3 moves that are on her optimal set, because it's used really only for killing. When you have 2 enemies left, that's when you start using Wicked Hack. The front 2 enemies, it's very good for killing one of them and then entering the real part of the stalling phase, and that's what Wicked Hack is best for. It's also best for just, finishing the fight, because generally the last enemy you'll have alive is the position. It will be in position 1, and Wicked Hack can reach and kill that position 1 enemy. It's got a low accuracy. That's not really exciting. 105 is below the average of 107 in the game for damaging moves. But it's a generic good move. It doesn't reach rank 3 or 4, so it's not really exciting in terms of race part of the fight, but it's alright, because she does have other moves that do that. Her next move is Iron Swan. Her best move, in my opinion, by a far cry. Iron Swan is launchable from position 1 and only targets position 4. And now you might be wondering why that's her best move. It's her best move because it is the best move in the game, in the entire game, for projecting damage at the rank 4 character. Hellion has an amazing damage base, and just being able to apply that full damage base onto position 4 with Iron Swan with a crit mod of 9%, meaning she crits 18% of the time, which is what, roughly 1 in every 5.5 times? 1 in every 5.5 times, she'll be critting and killing, in that case, position 4, and that's very good. Even if she doesn't crit, if you give her some damage trinkets or some damage quirks, you might just connect with rank 4 and just kill it, and that's amazing. Being able to being one of the more guaranteed to kill rank 4 characters in the game makes Hellion really amazing, and Iron Swan is what allows her to do that, and so Iron Swan is one of her best moves. This is often going to be targeting a stress caster or some kind of disease caster in the Warrens, for example, and that's going to be really helpful in those scenarios. It also is very notable for if you want to rush down specific bosses, such as, for example, if you can't really get the pews, all 3 of the pews against the Prophet, you can just repeatedly Iron Swan the Prophet, who's sitting in rank 4. That's really good for Iron Swan. You can also do other things with this. It just allows you. This is part of what makes the Hellion have. This is part of the set that makes Hellion have Omni range, and this is a very strong move for the position 4 version, the position 4 portion of it. Barbaric Yop is her next move, and this move is really good too. It does definitely give Iron Swan a run for its money, but they do different jobs, so we're happy to have Barbaric Yop be so powerful. It is a stun move. It is the Hellion stun move that is limited to 3, so 3 uses only, and it's launchable from positions 1 and 2, and AoEs, so it hits both of the opponent's positions 1 and 2 enemies. Rather, both of the enemies in positions 1 and 2. And what it does is it stuns them, and it stuns them with an accuracy of 115%, really good accuracy for a stunning move. Damage mod of negative 100%, which means you don't deal damage. That's fine, whatever. The stun chance, though, is 150%. 150% is the highest stun chance in the game. So, you are applying the highest stun chance in the game to the front 2 characters. That's amazing! That's so good. That's so powerful for Barbaric Yop. It's gonna pretty consistently stun both of those characters, both of those frontline enemies, and you're gonna be really happy when you do that, because what you're essentially doing with Barbaric Yop is you are trading one of your team's actions to get rid of, for the turn, 2 of the opponent's actions, and the 2 front ones, that is. This is really, that's a really good thing. You are gaining action economy over over the enemies whenever you use Barbaric Yop, and that's really good. The thing is, I don't recommend leading with Barbaric Yop. So when you get into a fight right away, obviously you'll probably want to use Iron Swan over Barbaric Yop, and the real reason for that is because you don't really need to stun the position 1 and 2 characters in the beginning of the fight. You really want to deal with the backline at the beginning of every single fight, and Iron Swan does that, and Barbaric Yop doesn't. Where this move is strongest, and where I think it's amazing, and why I think it's a staple on her set, is that it allows you to start the stalling phase of the fight early. What I mean by that is when there are 2 characters left, usually when you don't have a Hellion to Yop both of those characters, you're still kind of in a middling kind of race-ish part of the fight where you want to get rid of one of those 2 characters, so that you can stall on one character in the front line. And Yop, which can disable both those characters, can allow you to extend the middling race portion of the fight, which is good because you can still stress heal and heal off of those in that middling portion of the fight. And so Yop is really good for that. It allows you a lot of recovery options, and allows you a lot of recovery time. It buys you a lot of recovery time. Oh, that's right. The last thing I forgot to mention about this move is that it also debuffs the Hellion herself for minus 20% damage and minus 3 speed. So that's another reason why you don't want to lead with this. You don't want to debuff the Hellion right away, especially since if she has something to still Iron Swan, you do not want to be debuffing the Hellion. And you really don't want to be debuffing the Hellion right away, because this exhaust mechanic on the Hellion, these debuffs she has on a few of her moves, Breakthrough has one and Bleed Out has one. All of these exhaust mechanics on the Hellion, where she debuffs herself, cannot be purged by medicinal herbs. Oh, and these are debuffs that last for 3 rounds. So for the next 3 rounds, after Barbaric Yop happens, Hellion will be debuffed. Her next move and her last optimal move I recommend is If It Bleeds. This is a move that can be launched for positions 1, 2, and 3 and targets the opponent's positions 2 and 3. It's got an accuracy of 105, just like all of these other damaging moves. So it's just like those other damaging moves, below the average of 107. And the damage mod, there's a negative damage mod of 35%, which means it'll deal less upfront damage than the other moves. And let's just do some math real quick. It'll deal, what, 8 to 16 or 17. 8 to 16 or 17 is... Yeah, 8 to 16 or 17 from If It Bleeds when you use it. And then it bleeds for 4. It's a Hellion's bleeding move, and it bleeds for 4. So what is that? It takes you up to 12 to 20-ish. 12 to 20 is pretty good. 12 to 20 is above average. And it's also above the Hellion's actual damage range. So this move actually is able to project more damage onto positions 2 and 3 than Wicked Hack can project to position 2. It's able to project more damage to position 2 than Wicked Hack is able to project onto position 2. And here's the big but. It needs to land the bleed portion of this move in order for that to be true. If it doesn't land the bleed, you were much better off using Wicked Hack, because not only does Wicked Hack not only does If It Bleeds have a negative damage mod, it also has a lower crit mod than Wicked Hack. So again, like I mentioned before, if you're in a size 2 fight, If It Bleeds is probably better, because you'll generally get the full duration of the bleed off. But this is a good move. This is part of her Omni range set. So Wicked Hack covers positions 1 and 2. If it bleeds, can cover positions 2 and 3. And Iron Swan will cover position 4. So with these 3 damaging moves, she'll be able to hit any position, and she'll be able to put a lot of damage into those positions, and Barbaric Yop is there for utility. But let's go through these moves, and let's see when and why we would run them. Breakthrough. Breakthrough is an AoE move that is launchable from positions 2, 3, and 4, and can hit and hits the first 3 positions of the enemy team. This move is probably her least exciting move, to be honest. I think this is her weakest move by a long shot. But there is a slight application for it. The Hellion kind of loses a lot of her viability in Iron Swan, of course, if she's not in position 1. And if she were to be shuffled, like for example through surprises and stuff, it's not very optimal for her. And so being able to use Breakthrough to move forward 1, back to bring her slowly back toward the front while she does something is a good thing to do with Breakthrough. I would personally click off if it bleeds and move on to Breakthrough if you are very, very scared of being surprised. This is the set I would recommend running. I don't really see much value into this though, because it just doesn't do that much damage. With a negative 50% damage mod, it's got what, a 5 to 10 damage range to any of those positions, and so it suffers from the typical problem with AoEs in that you're not focusing things down with Breakthrough. This is just like something you can do while you're moving forward instead of manually moving forward, and so I'm not too excited about this move. It also gives her some debuffs. The exhaust mechanic is on this, and so that's really not exciting either. Overall, just one of the more mediocre moves, but definitely a tech move you can use against enemies that you know will shuffle you. For example, the Shuffling Horror in DD1. You generally won't be bringing Hellions to DD1, but if you were to, I would definitely recommend Breakthrough being on your set. You can also expect... There's not that many enemies that shuffle you, so never mind. I'm going to say Breakthrough is really bad. Don't run this. Just don't run this. It's not worth it. Adrenaline Rush is a self-heal for the Hellion. It is launchable from any of the 4 positions, and it cures the blight and the bleed that the Hellion is suffering from, and it heals her for 4 HP and buffs her for 30% damage and gives her plus 10 accuracy. So Adrenaline Rush is actually very, very good, and I do recommend sometimes you trying out a set that looks like this instead. And the reason I recommend trying out a set like this is because let me just keep it like that. Is because when we were talking about the Hellion stats and how she can only move forward 1 position and 0 backwards. We were talking about how the Hellion can't really do anything in the stalling phase. If you look at it, Wicked Hack would end the stalling phase by accident. You can't Iron Swan anything in the stalling phase, and if it bleeds some corpses, it works. But if there are no corpses if it bleeds, then you can't really do anything. So you're really stuck with using Yop in the stalling phases, and Yop would debuff you for too much, way too much, that I don't want to be spamming Yop. Not only that, it's limited to 3 uses, and on top of that as well, you will be trying to repeatedly stun the same enemies, which means as they gain stun resist, you won't be really stunning them. So really, she has nothing to do in the stalling phase currently with this set, but if you were to click on Adrenaline Rush, she can help with the stalling phase a little bit, and she will also be able to not have to pass her turn or spam Yop during the stalling phase of the fight. And not only that, as you use this more and more on her, as you use Adrenaline Rush more and more on her, she'll be stronger and stronger and more able to hit the enemies that spawn from reinforcements. And as long as you're able to do that, you can further prolong your stalling phase for as long as you want. So this is actually a really good skill. The Cure Blight and Bleed part of it is a little weird to me, but it's nice. Like, it's able to get her clear some pesky dots that hit her, for example, from the Cultist Brawlers that usually smack her from position 1. Overall, generally a good move. You can try a set with that. Bleed Out is her last move, a move that is launchable from position 1 and targets the enemy position 1. It's got 105 accuracy, so overall the Hellion's moves are generally lower accuracy. It's got a damage mod of plus 20%. Plus 20% is really good, because this will scale with her crits, and she gets a lot of crits, and especially with a crit mod of plus 10%. She crits about 1 in every 5 times with Bleed Out, and so Bleed Out itself benefits from that damage mod and that crit mod, because damage mods scale with crits. And let's see, Oh, I did a talk about it when I did my Highwayman video when we were talking about like point blank shot, I believe, or wicked slice, one of those. And so you can just go check out why damage mods scale with crit mods. I'm not going to repeat that talk. Um, but if we do some quick math, we've got like what 12 to our damage range would be 12 to what 24, 12 to 24, 25. And then on top of that, we also apply a 5x3 bleed. A 5x3 bleed is very, very good. It's pretty much flagellant level. Flagellant applies a 5x3 bleed on Rain of Sorrows. So that's really respectable. We can tell that's probably a good bleed. Um, this really doesn't really have that many applications in the hallway fights because you don't want to be forcing so much damage down the throat of a frontline enemy, because you will be stalling off them more often than not. But it has really good applications in boss fights where you are going to be attempting to apply this huge this huge bleed, as well as getting a lot of upfront damage in the process. Worth it to mention as well is that since this move has such a high crit modifier, you might crit this and get a 5x5 bleed instead. That's how durations work with dots, where if you crit with them, they have a and they apply at a 1.5 times duration. 3 rounds times 1.5 is roughly 4.5 rounds. That rounds up to 5 in this game. So this move is really, really good for boss fights. So I'm thinking Swine King. I'm thinking the DD3 Cyst. I'm thinking other characters that just are in position 1. Siren, Necromancer, the Flesh. You can do this too. A lot of bosses will not enjoy being hit really hard and getting dotted for a 5x3. So let's move on to our camp skills. Battle Trance. Battle Trance is a time cost of 3. Self only plus 25% damage if in position 1. Minus 25% damage if not in position 1. So this is an insane camp skill for damage. 25% is huge. That is literally Dismas's Head, which is a very rare trinket, gives you 25% damage. With a negative 10 health, max health penalty, as well as a plus 20% stress penalty. So this just grants you that buff for the minor debuff of 25% penalty in damage if not in position 1. Hellion, who is often in position 1, will be generally making use of 25%. But if she's not in position 1, then you can just purge that debuff with medicinal herbs. This is a debuff you can actually purge with medicinal herbs, and so Battle Trance is very strong. This is very clickable right before boss fights. This is a very, very powerful battle. This is a very powerful damage buff. Next camp skill is Revel, a time cost of 3. The whole party, this is casted and affects the whole party. The whole party gets a minus 5 accuracy debuff, a minus 2 speed debuff, these are pretty heavy debuffs. I'm not gonna lie, these are really, really sad. But they heal for 20 stress and get a further stress reduction of 10% for the next 4 battles. This camp skill, the amount of stress it just rips off of your team is insane. This is so much stress heal. This is a time cost of 3, and it can rip off 80 stress from your team. This is the best camp skill in the entire game for healing stress. The next closest one is the Crusaders, which costs 5 first of all, and heals for 60. It costs 5 and heals for 60. Like, look at the Hellion. This is insane. Wait, where's the Hellion? That's insane. This is so powerful. This costs 2 less camp points and heals you for like 20 more. That's crazy. It does come with these crazy heavy debuffs though, but you can purge those debuffs away. Another thing that people generally do is they will save their campfire for the end of the entire dungeon and cast Revel at the end, camp at the end, after they've completed the camp objective, the dungeon objective, and camp and Revel and get a huge stress cure before re-entering the hamlet. That's very viable too. I don't generally do that, but Revel, very, very strong. So powerful. If you are planning on casting Revel, though, you should have herbs in your inventory. You should bring extra herbs into provisions. Reject the Gods, a time cost of 2, is an Hellion only stress heal. She heals herself for 30 stress, which is a huge heal, because if we compare it to Encourage, which also costs 2, it is a heal of 15. So Reject the Gods itself is twice in effectiveness, It's 2 times as effective as Encourage, but it comes with the downside of casting 7 stress onto all other companions, and if they're religious, casting 15 instead. So let's just take a best case scenario with Reject the Gods where she just casts 7 stress onto 3 characters. That means you as the player are healing 30 and gaining 21. This makes Reject the Gods really, really bad, because you're spending 2 camp points to overall across your party heal only 9 stress, and that's a lot worse than Encourage. This is often not too good of a camp skill to click. It's there in case for some reason you want to heal specifically the Hellion, for example, if she's specifically above the others in terms of stress, but I don't like this camp skill. I'm not a fan of it. This is not good. Moving on to our last one, though, is Sharpened Spear, time cost of 3. A self buff for 10 crit. A self buff for 10 crit. 10 crit is so much crit to be buffing yourself by. 10 crit brings, like, just, alright, let's just pick Iron Swan. 9, wait, this is 18, 10 crit, 28%. You're buffing yourself to 28% crit. That means you crit more often than 1 in 4 times if you were to click Sharpened Spear. I like critting. Critting is very good. Sharpened Spear gives me crit, and it gives me very consistent crit. Sharpened Spear must be good. Simple as that. Really one of the strongest, also one of the strongest. Next to Battle Trance, also another one of the strongest damage camp skills in the entire game. So, obviously, when you, for me, when I enter a camp with the Hellion, I look to click Battle Trance and Sharpened Spear right away in conjunction with each other. They scale it off each other extremely well, and that makes the Hellion into a crazy, crazy damage dealer. Probably, with these 2 camp skills alone, Hellion is one of the best damage dealers in the game, next to, in the leagues of, next to the Shieldbreaker and the Highwayman as some of the best damage dealers in the game. Those are my top 3 damage dealers in the game. Hellion, Shieldbreaker, Highwayman. Not specifically in that order. It depends really on the situation which one's the best. Generally, it's the Highwayman, but the Hellion is really good as well with these camp buffs. She is insane. Really good camp skill. But after oozing all of those camp skill, after oozing over all of these amazing camp skills, and skills, let's switch over to her trinkets. So here are the Hellion's rare and very rare trinkets. Heaven's Hairpin is her rare. It gives her a negative 25% stress if the torch is above 75, and also if the torch is above 75, she also gets plus 10 accuracy. Let me just say this here. This is the best class rare in the entire game. It is so impactful for what it does for the Hellion. This is, if you see this at all in any dungeon being offered, it says it can be only offered in the Cove, but I've found it in other places, so I'm not sure if this wiki is updated with that. If you see this in any dungeon, you should pick this up. Like, just period. This does so much. Plus 10 accuracy for the Hellion is so good because she needs to get away from the 105 and more closer to the upper ranges of accuracy. And this is such a good trinket to do that. And on top of that, it also gives 25 of stress reduction. This is so good. That's a fourth of the stress incoming, just not being applied to the Hellion. This sucks up stress so much. Heaven's Hairpin, so good. Oh my god, is this such a good trinket. To be honest, this is literally, if we compare it to the Focus Ring, which is one of the best very rare trinkets just to give to anybody in general. Focus Ring gives 10 accuracy, it gives 5 crit, and it gives a penalty of -8 dodge, which is a pretty hefty penalty. It's not as important because dodge is not that important of a stat, but a difference of 8 dodge is a good difference. And so Heaven's Hairpin having no penalty at all, and instead being a more defensive version of the Focus Ring, I'm okay with. I'm okay with Heaven's Hairpin. I personally run it over Focus Ring in the end game on Hellions. This makes them really resilient to the stress, and it's not like Hellion needed too much more crit anyway. She was already critting a lot, especially with her camp buff. Of course, I always say that more crit is always better because you want it to be consistent. But if you use the Hellion's camp buff 1 out of 4 times, is already very, very consistent. You don't need to make that too much more consistent. Amazing trinket. This is definitely on the same power level as some very rare trinkets in the entire game. All right. That's all I gotta say about it. But let's look at Hale's Hairpin, which is actually the exact opposite of Heaven's Hairpin in every way, shape, and form, because it's one of the worst very rares in the entire game, because it requires you to be below 25 torch in order to even gain these buffs. You don't want to be sitting at low torch. Sitting at low torch makes the game a lot harder than it needs to be. You can do torturous runs, of course, but it's not needed. But let's look at what it does, right? So let's see if it's worth. Plus 10 crit if torch is below 25, plus 15 accuracy if torch is below 25, and it gives you a minus 10 debuff and bleed resistance. The minus bleed resistance is a little concerning. She is one of the higher bleed resist characters in the game, but I don't want to decrease her defensive stats in any way. Plus 10 crit is a lot of crit, to be honest, and plus 15 accuracy is a lot of accuracy, but there's no need for these when you have Heaven's Hairpin giving 10 accuracy already. 10 accuracy is already way more than enough most of the time, and plus 10 crit's nice, but I just don't see plus 10 crit like doing enough to counteract the extra stress I'll be taking when I'm at low torch, the extra damage I'll be taking when I'm low torch, and the extra crit chance that the enemies have at low torch. Just not a very good trinket overall. It's just what the dark trinkets in the game don't generally tend to give you enough of a payout, an incentive to be running torchless runs themselves. So in the end game overall, I recommend the Heaven's Hairpin. And what do you run next to the Heaven's Hairpin? You can run a variety of things. Um, you can run speed trinkets. That fixes the Hellion's problems a lot of the time because she is one of the slower damage dealers in the game, and being faster would be better. So that we're talking about things like Feather Crystal, Crescendo Box, Crescendo Box. What's the other one? Ancestor's Candle. You can try Berserk Mask is actually one of the ones that I actually want to talk about specifically. Berserk Charm is actually what I meant. Berserk Charm is one of the ones I specifically wanted to mention with the Hellion. It gives plus 3 speed, one of the highest speed buffs in the game, plus 15 damage, plus 15 stress, which is negated by Heaven's Hairpin, minus 5 accuracy, which is also negated by Heaven's Hairpin, and minus 10 virtue chance, which is not that big of a deal. This is a crazy trinket to be running next to the Heaven's Hairpin. Other trinkets you can run next to Heaven's Hairpin are Stun Amulet to make your Barbaric Yop even more consistent. Also, gives the Hellion a stronger stun resist. As long as you buff her damage or accuracy or crit in any other way, shape, or form with Heaven's Hairpin, it's good. So things like Surgical Gloves also works very well. As well as Ancestor's Pen, since all of her moves are melee. Let's move on to her team comps. Whoops, forgot to OBS that. No! Shit! I forgot to OBS this as well. So now we didn't actually... No! No! We've been looking at the game the entire time and not this screen. Alright, we're gonna have to edit it again, just like we did the Jester. Hello. Highly unfortunate. Yeah, it's fine though. It's not that hard to fix that. So I see a new name here, Tater. Tater, I'm doing a YouTube video right now. I'm doing a review video for the Hellion. If I could just ask you to keep your mic muted until I'm done, that'd be very nice. Oh, well, I mean, we just accidentally had a team already. Shoot, I forgot to take this team away and build it as we went. But well, here it is. The Hellion's best team comps and best partners. We accidentally had a team here already. This is one of her better teams in my opinion. We've got the Hellion herself is a good damage dealer and a stunner, and so it would be ideally very nice to have a way to keep your damage dealers alive. So the Vestal is very good. And then, having another stunner and the bounty hunter is a very good idea. And then at that point, you've got all the stuff you need. So you just slap more damage on. And the Highwayman's good at that. So this is a good team. A specific note in this team is that the Highwayman will riposte forward and not move Hellion out of position 1. He will have his riposte set up. Hellion will still have Iron Swan as a usual move. And that's very good. And we have a stunner in the bounty hunter in position 3. And that's very good too. Bounty hunter works in position 3 very well. So this team itself has amazing damage, projection, and range, and ability, and a lot of good stunning. So let's look at other teams. So let's unclick these guys. Let's go for another healer, right? So let's go for the Occultist. The Occultist is our other main healer, main primary. is the other healer with good healing abilities. And Occultist in 2 is pretty good. Occultist in 3 is generally okay as well. But if you're running Occultist in 3, you might as well run a Vestal. So let's run him in 2. Let's see what we can do. What are we here? We have a lot of stuns, so we want characters that can deal damage out of positions 3, and 4. We can think right away. The Arbalist can do that, and she's also an off healer, so that we can make sure the Occultist gets his heals, make sure they're really good. And then we have a slot here where we can where we need to find a damage dealer and another damage dealer, a damage dealer that comes out of position 3 is a Jester, and then we can also get a stress healing out of Jester. This is a pretty cool comp to run. Of course, we can also go down the route where we now put a Plague Doctor on the team and have Plague Doctor be the Occultist's off healer. And now we have a potential to not only AoE the backline with Plague Doctor, but AoE stun the front line with the Hellion at the same time. And that's a full team, a full team stun on the enemies. Really, when you're looking at this comp, though, you are really lacking in another form of damage, so you're going to want to run a good damage dealer in 3. Again, we're looking at the Jester. Again, you have stress heals here. We can also look at the Highwayman, so you can riposte forward, and now Occultist is in 3. And that's okay. We can look for the Crusader, starting from the back, like this. That'd be pretty okay secondary damage dealer next to the Hellion. We can also look at Houndmaster, if I didn't mention him yet. Houndmaster works as well. A lot of things you can do with the Hellion. She, as you can see, I've never moved her from position 1. She does work in position 2, but you're losing Iron Swan and maybe like using this kind of set. This set isn't as impressive just because Iron Swan is her best move, and putting her in a position where she doesn't have access to her best move is not a good idea. But in terms of flexibility, she's one of the least flexible characters in the game for that reason, and she's hard locked in position 1. So what does that mean for Hellion? It doesn't really matter much, because she's actually, I think, in my opinion, the best position 1 character. If you try a lot of other characters in the game that are bound for frontline aren't really locked into position 1 like the Hellion is. The Leper is the only other locked into position 1 character I can think of, and Hellion does outclass the Leper in a lot of ways. So being the default best position 1 character makes Hellion very easy to fit into a lot of teams. So overall, what is my overall rating of her? What is my tiering of the Hellion? Let's go through all the stuff again. She's got amazing stats, really, really good in general. Generally above average for everything, and really, really above average for certain very, very important stats like HP, dodge, crit, damage range, and bleed resist, making her very durable and very good damage dealer. She's got amazing skills, a very, very good omni range set with a lot of possibilities in teching out certain moves like this. Doing a set like that, or doing a set like this is very nice, or doing a set more like this would be very nice too. Very, very usable. All of these sets are very good. Her optimal set is, of course, this. But this set itself offers Omni range as well as AoE stun. Amazing things. She's got crazy camp skills for making herself an amazing damage dealer between these 2 moves, as well as Revel, which is an insane stress healing skill. This one's not that great, but whatever. And she's got amazing trinkets. She's got an amazing trinket in Heaven's Hairpin, doing everything the Hellion needs, as well as being very, very flexible in team comps, fitting into a lot of them as the default best position 1 character. So what rank do I give the default best position 1 character? Clearly that deserves an S rank. If you are the best at position 1, you are S rank. That's it. If there is no better alternative to you, you have to be S rank. That's it. She is a lower S rank character though, because of her weaknesses in not being able to move backward, actually being a weakness, and her slightly lower speed than other damage dealers. But S rank nonetheless. One last thing before I end this video for real, there is a special thing with the Hellion. The speedrunning team that most people use, the speedrunning strategy and the comp that they use is actually very centered around the Hellion. And I don't have 2 Highwaymen here, but let's just pretend this Man-at-Arms here is the other Highwayman. Highwayman. Yeah. So the team here that most people is right here that most people use for speedrunning the game. I think the speedrunning world record is 3 hours to complete this game, and the team that they use is Vestal, Highwayman, Hellion. And the reason that they don't use more than one Hellion is because she's really only optimal in position one. I'm pretty sure if Hellion was able to have more optimal positions, they would probably use more Hellions. But since they can't, Highwayman is a very strong alternative as well. So if you're in a speedrun team and you're on a quote unquote optimal team for that, you probably are S tier. And these other characters are S tier as well. Vestal and Highwayman. Oh, and I guess Man at Arms is S tier as well, but he's just here to be a fake Highwayman. That is the true end of the video. Thank you for watching.